Imagine for a second that you're standing at the absolute peak of your life. I want you to really visualize it. The pinnacle. What does that image? What does that actually look like in your head?
Right.
Is it you, in all this high-tech gear on top of Mount Everest with a flag?
Or maybe a corner office somewhere.
Exactly. Or is it something completely invisible?
That is the fundamental question we're tackling today, isn't it? I mean, we spend decades climbing these ladders.
Oh, the ladder.
Corporate, social, literal mountains.
Mm.
Assuming that the view from the top is going to change how we feel inside.
Right.
But this deep dive, we're going to dismantle that. We're looking at a transcript of a talk by Sadhguru, Live Life to the Fullest, and honestly, it's a bit of a wake-up call.
Wake-up call is putting it lightly. I'll admit, when I first saw the title, my guard went up. I thought, okay, here it comes.
Positive thinking fluff.
The fluff. Just smile more, manifest your dreams, tell yourself you're great in the mirror and everything's fine.
I think we all have that reflex. But this source, it isn't fluff. It's actually surprisingly technical. It reads less like a motivational poster
Yeah.
and more like a diagnostic manual for a machine we've all been misusing.
That's the perfect way to put it. And that's the angle for today. We're looking at the human machine. The mission is to figure out this weird anomaly. Why are we the most comfortable generation in history?
Yeah.
Not the most joyful.
And the source argues it's because our internal systems are like on a legacy setting. It just doesn't work anymore. Specifically, we need to switch from push start to self-start.
I love that. It sounds like a slogan, but when you dig in, it's a huge shift.
It's radical.
And we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of that switch. But first, we have to talk about the destination. We have to unpack this idea of the peak.
Yeah.
Because the source opens with this story about Mount Everest that's, well, it's pretty ironic.
It is the perfect illustration of the whole problem.
Yeah.
So Sadhguru talks about a man who actually climbed Everest. This isn't a metaphor.
A real guy.
Real guy. Yeah. Did the training, spent the money, went up the mountain. He even took a picture of Sadhguru with him in his pocket. A gesture of respect.
Which sounds like the ultimate tribute, right? I carried you to the top of the world. It's the hero's journey.
On paper, yeah. But the reality was grim. The man comes back down and explains what actually happened. He says he was at the summit for just about 40 seconds.
40 seconds. Just think about that. Years of training, tens of thousands of dollars, risking your life for less than a minute.
And it wasn't a good minute. He says the winds were screaming. It was incredibly dangerous. He was freezing to death. And here's the kicker. He couldn't see a thing. The elements were just blinding him. So he stood there, blind, freezing, and miserable for 40 seconds, and then ran back down to save his life.
That completely undermines the entire commercial for Everest, doesn't it?
Completely.
We have this romantic idea of soaking in the majesty of the earth, but the reality is you're just trying not to die. You conquer the physical peak, but the internal experience is just misery.
And that is the core insight right there. We confuse the external peak, the coordinate on a map, the job title, with the internal peak. He argues the peak is not in what you're doing outside, the peak is in the way you experience it.
So climbing the mountain is just gymnastics. It guarantees nothing about how you feel.
Exactly. The source draws this really stark contrast. You can have someone sitting in a palace, the ultimate symbol of success.
Everything you could ever want.
And they can be in the pit of life, depressed, anxious, just miserable. But at the same time, someone sitting on a street curb could be at the absolute peak of human experience internally.
That is a really hard concept to swallow. Our whole economy is built on selling us the palace.
Right.
We're told the location dictates the feeling. Just get to that zip code and you'll feel good.
But it's not true. The source insists the quality of your life has nothing to do with your car or your clothes. It's solely determined by how joyful you feel right now in this moment. That's the only metric.
So if the palace doesn't trigger that metric...
The palace is useless.
Okay, so here's the question then. If the car and the house don't automatically turn on the joy switch, why do we keep chasing them? This brings us to my favorite part of the source, the push-start analogy.
This is just brilliant. It's engineering history applied to psychology. The source talks about the evolution of cars. Back in the 1950s, a car was often a push-start situation.
I can just picture it.
You literally needed people to shove the vehicle down the street to get the engine firing.
Just to get to work. What a struggle.
Then by the 60s, maybe you had a crank start. You still had to physically crank a lever at the front. But today, every car is self-start. You push a button, and you're gone. The ignition is internal.
We've made the external tech effortless.
We have. But the point he makes is that for most human beings, their joy and their peace are still stuck on that 1950s push-start setting.
That is a rough diagnostic. So
Well-
what does a push-start human look like?
It means your internal state depends entirely on external forces. To be happy, the world has to be perfect first. Your boss has to be in a good mood, the stocks have to be up, the traffic has to be clear.
So you're just sitting in your emotional driveway, totally idle, waiting for the universe to come give you a push so you can feel good.
Precisely. And the source points out how absurd that is. We set up these endless conditions for our own happiness. If the world changes, then I'll be peaceful. But the world never does, so we're just perpetually stalled.
And this leads to what he calls the comfort paradox, because we have changed the world. A lot.
You'd think that would make it easier. And the history here is so important. He reminds us that just 100 years ago, getting water meant walking to a river with a heavy pot on your head.
Right.
Today, you just flick your wrist. We organize survival to be effortless.
And the assumption was, if we solved the survival problem, we'd all just sit around being blissed out.
We equated comfort with joy. But look around. We're the most comfortable generation in history. We have DoorDash and climate control. But we are definitely not the most joyful or loving.
And he uses that term caveman anxiety for this.
Yes. The caveman was anxious about his next meal. That's a legitimate survival signal. If he didn't worry, he died.
Mm-hmm.
But we have the same level of anxiety firing. It's just shifted targets. The software hasn't been patched.
So instead of worrying about a tiger, I'm worrying about what my next apartment.
Your next apartment,
Yeah.
your promotion,
Yeah.
what someone implied in a text message.
Yeah.
The survival struggle is gone, but the anxiety mechanism is still firing on all cylinders.
So the hardware, the world is safe, but the operating system is just glitching out.
Because we haven't learned to operate the machine. We've just cushioned the environment around the machine. We put the anxious caveman in a heated apartment, but he's still an anxious caveman.
Okay, let's talk about operating the machine, because there's a really controversial take in here that I want to dig into. The source says explicitly, peace is not the highest goal in life.
I flagged that too. It goes against so much of what we hear. Rest in peace. I just want some peace and quiet. We frame it as the ultimate goal.
Right. I mean, I pay for a meditation app specifically to find peace. But he argues that peace is just the baseline, the bare minimum for being competent.
He uses this humbling comparison. He points to a dog. You feed a dog, and it just sits there, curled up, perfectly peaceful. It's not some huge spiritual achievement.
It's just not hungry.
It's just not hungry.
So my dog is beating me at the highest goal of life just by napping.
Effectively, yes, but the logic is sound. Think about it. If you want to enjoy your lunch, you need to be peaceful.
Yeah.
If you're stressed, you can't taste the food. If you want to drive a car sensibly, you need to be peaceful. If you're raging, you crash.
So peace isn't the summit, it's the foundation.
Exactly. It's like saying, my goal for this computer is for it to turn on. Well, yeah, but that's just the prerequisite for actually using it. If your only goal is to be peaceful, you're setting the bar incredibly low.
And if you're not peaceful, it's because you've lost control of the vehicle.
Which brings us to the supercomputer metaphor. I think this is the technical heart of the talk. He describes the human system, mind, body, everything, as the most sophisticated machine on the planet. A supercomputer.
But we don't have the manual.
It's worse. He says most people haven't even found the keyboard.
Or the steering wheel.
Right. Imagine having a high-performance sports car, but you don't know where the steering wheel is. You're just flailing around. Of course you're anxious. You're terrified you're going to crash.
He compares us to blacksmiths, which is such a visceral image.
Yes. Taking this incredibly sensitive, subtle machine and just banging on it like a blacksmith with a hammer and anvil. Blunt force.
And there was that specific detail about the sensitivity. Like about just turning your hand over.
That was fascinating. He says, if you hold your hands one way, you breathe one way. If you turn them over, the breathing pattern in your lungs changes.
I want to try this. Okay, so if I sit here, palms up, I'm breathing. Okay. Now I flip them palms down.
Feel that in your rib cage.
Yeah, it feels different. More in the lower ribs. It's subtle, but it's there.
It is subtle, and that's the point. The slightest movement changes your breath.
Yeah.
And the breath changes your mind. Yet we ignore all that.
We just bang on it.
We treat our bodies and minds like blunt instruments and then wonder why we feel off. We're trying to make a supercomputer run by hitting it with a hammer.
So we're banging on the machine, we're anxious, we don't have the steering wheel. What do? We look for a safe place, a comfort zone.
And this is the trap. He argues the reason we seek comfort zones isn't because we love comfort, but because we're trying to avoid the stimulation that torments our out-of-control minds.
You just park the car.
You park the car, you limit the scope of your life to avoid suffering, you make your life smaller so there are fewer things to crash into, but the cost is a stagnant life. Growth only happens in unfamiliar situations.
But isn't the dream to be comfortable, the golden palace in the sky where everything's perfect?
He absolutely hates the Golden Palace concept. He calls it anesthetic.
Anesthetic, like it just numbs you.
Yeah. He argues that even if you went to a perfect heaven, a palace with perfect food and soft beds, you'd be bored within 3 days.
3 days. That seems short. I feel like I could do a week at an all-inclusive.
Maybe a week. But forever. It's human nature to want to break barriers. We are built for expansion. If you put a human in a box, even a golden one, and say, stay here, you will be fed, they will be miserable.
Because that's what you do with a pet.
Exactly his point.
Yeah.
He says if you're satisfied just being fondled and fed, you've reduced yourself to a pet animal.
Ouch. That hits. So deep down, we don't want comfort. We want to strive.
We want to expand. But we're scared of the suffering because we don't know how to drive the car.
Yeah.
So we settle for comfort. And then we try to institutionalize the joy we're missing.
This is an interesting pivot, the difference between an institution and an individual.
Right. He brings up things like the UN or universities. He
Yeah.
says, you can have a United Nations for peace, but you cannot institutionalize peace.
You can't legislate an internal state.
Or education. An engineering degree gets you a job, but it doesn't guarantee a working brain in the existential sense. You can have a PhD and still operate your own mind like a blacksmith.
I love that distinction.
The institution is just an external framework. But joy, love, peace, those have to be engineered individually. You can't outsource your inner life to a government.
So we've got to engineer it ourselves. Self-start. But here's where it gets complex. You might think, okay, I just focus on me, myself, and I. But the source takes a sharp turn toward biology and connection.
Yes, the social animal argument. It shifts from internal mechanics to our biological reality. He points out that unlike ancient times, modern life is heavily interdependent.
The 7 billion logic.
Right. He says if the other 7 billion people on the planet are in trouble, there is no way for you to escape that trouble. You can't build a wall high enough to keep out collective misery.
So caring about others isn't just being nice. It's a self-preservation strategy.
He calls it wise selfishness. Think about the mechanics of your mind again. If you exploit others, you create a defense response in your own system. You end up lonely and paranoid.
Which is definitely not a peak experience.
Exactly. But if you treat everyone as a brother or sister, I know that sounds like a cliche.
It does, but what's the mechanism?
He says when you view others as allies, your mental level becomes completely relaxed. The anxiety drops. Your system stops fighting.
So it's a hack for your own mental health.
Yeah,
Warm-heartedness is a strategy for a restful mind.
precisely. Viewing people as strangers creates tension. Viewing them as part of your team creates ease. To get that self-start joy, you actually need to plug into the network of other people in a positive way.
It connects back to the machine. The supercomputer runs smoother when it's not in a constant state of defense against the rest of the species.
Perfectly put. It's about efficiency as much as morality.
So let's bring this all together. We've covered a lot of ground in this user manual. We started with the mountain.
And learned the peak isn't a place you climb to. It's an experience you create within.
We looked at the car.
And realize we're waiting for a push start from the world when we have the ignition button inside us.
We looked at the blacksmith.
And saw we're mishandling a supercomputer by banging on it with anxiety.
And finally, the trap of comfort.
Understanding that comfort is just a way to hide from life, not experience it. Real expansion means stepping out of that safety zone.
This deep dive really forces you to look at your own dashboard, doesn't it? Am I driving this thing, or am I just a passenger screaming in the back seat?
That's the relevance right there. This is about confidence, not luck or blessings.
Mm-hmm.
It's about learning to drive the vehicle of your own life.
And I want to leave everyone with this final thought from the source, because it really stuck with me. He talks about the illiterate peasant in his culture.
This is so profound. He says in modern society, we ask for like a golden horse, a better apartment, a new phone. We ask for comfort. But he says even an illiterate peasant in his culture, someone with nothing, if you ask what they want, they'll say they want ultimate liberation.
Ultimate liberation.
Yeah.
Not a better TV, not a softer bed. Liberation.
It's a massive challenge to us. We have everything, the technology, the comfort, the resources. But Are we using our supercomputer to seek liberation and expansion? Or are we just using this incredible machine to organize a slightly better survival?
Are you climbing the mountain to see the view or just to say you were there? That's the question. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
It was a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one. Keep exploring.